In this video, we're going to be discussing the 5 signings that we would make for Thomas Frank's Tottenham Hotspur, the new look Tottenham. Ben, are you ready to discuss?
I was born ready, mate. Love a bit of transfer talk on YouTube and a little bit of new manager chat as well. The dopamine is running through my veins with Thomas Frank.
Mate,
so
we got all of it here. If you are new to the channel, please like and subscribe. If you come over from Ben's video as well, we have done a tier list on Ben's account. We are doing keep, loan, sell kind of vibe on Ben's account. So from that video, you'll have a rough idea of who we think is going to be moved on from Tottenham Hotspur this summer, who's going to be loaned out, etc. We've got the squad in front of us here, and what we're going to do first basically is go through and remove those players that we think are going to get sold, look at the key areas that we think need strengthening in this squad, and then go through 5 potential signings, talk through a few options in those positions as well for where we think Tottenham Hotspur need to look in the transfer market, for Thomas Frank specifically as well. Also, me and Ben have already both covered Thomas Frank's incoming to Tottenham Hotspur, how we think he's going to set up tactically, his sort of approach and everything like that. So if you were interested in that, you can go and view those videos on both of our channels as well. But Ben, should we kick this off by talking about Sonny? Because I feel like that's quite a good place to start. Obviously, currently captain. Do you think he gets moved on this summer?
I think there's a good chance. There was a piece by Alice to Gold yesterday, wasn't there, where it said that he's more open to it now than he's ever been.
Yeah,
obviously he's older now than he's ever been at Spurs, which is like, and he's kind of past that prime and past that peak. I do actually think that although I think it would be the perfect time for Son to end his Spurs career, if Spurs can get some money for him, and also he goes out on the high of winning that trophy. I actually think in Frank's system, if you're basing off how we might set up, if you're basing how we might set up based on Thomas Frank's Brentford from last season, I actually think that role on the left-hand side suits him, Sonny, really nicely. Yeah. So I wouldn't really mind keeping him around, to be honest, but it just we might have a slight issue when it comes to squad registration for the Champions League. So we might have to sell some players that we didn't necessarily anticipate actively trying to sort of push out the door. And Sonny might be one of those, especially if there's a good fee to be had from either Saudi or somewhere else. Saudi is the most kind of common link right now. But like in terms of his profile, I think he definitely has a future under Frank. And it's just a case of kind of what we've spoken about before with Sonny, like under Ange, in the sense that if you use him well enough in terms of fit and also keep him fit and keep him fresh, then he can still be a really dangerous player. But
get him as close to goal as possible at the moment, isn't it, really? So
get him running in behind. Like, you want him kind of a bit more centrally. Like, you don't really want him stuck out on that touchline where he's got to rely on a burst of pace to go past people, which has never been his biggest strength anyway, really. His biggest strength has been getting in behind and scoring goals. And I do feel like with the way that he might use Solanke, that play on the left-hand side, I feel like that's probably going to be his task for the most part. 100%. So, I would probably lean towards moving him on, but I also wouldn't be mad if he stayed.
Yeah, I'd probably lean towards moving him on as well. Another point to that is I think that we have like a really good crop of youngsters over on that left-hand side as well. And I think if Sonny was to stay, I'd want to see his role quite significantly reduced within this team. And I just don't know if Sonny's got it in him to stay at Tottenham Hotspur and to not be that main guy starting on that left-hand side. So that's why I'd also probably look to move him on. I think Matisse Tell, Wilson Odobert, even Mikey Moore as well over in that position. I know I've got him in as a number 10 right now in this squad, but he is also another option over there. I'd like to see Sonny moved on to have that pathway for those 3, because I do really feel like those 3 are ready now, especially Matisse Tell and Wilson Odobert. So yeah, I'll move Sonny over for now to that question mark pile, to the potentially moving on pile. Richarlison, feel like it's a tap in, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's time to be moved on.
Yeah, no, 100%. Injury issues are just way too significant for us to ignore anymore, and he's never really been available for more than 10 games in his entire Tottenham Hotspur career, so we can't be relying on him anymore. Bissouma's an interesting one, so I feel like a lot of people really were adamant to sell Bissouma come the end of the season, but I think I'm included in this as well. I kind of see him fitting into this Frank system, especially if we play a double pivot. I think you can do a lot worse than Bissouma in that system, but is it still a case of it's just time to move on and look for better in that position, or what do you think?
Potentially. Again, I think a lot of the recruitment in midfield hinges on, weirdly actually, whether Romero leaves. Because I think me and you spoke about this the other day. We spoke about it with Kish as well, in the sense of like, if you were to lose Romero, you lose so much in terms of ball progression on that halfway 100%. Line or stepping up into midfield from defence. So I think you'd have to go out and buy another. You'd have to buy. Spurs have got to buy another centre back anyway, but you'd have to go and buy a midfielder to actually be able to have someone in that can do that and play quickly through the lines and get Tottenham up the pitch and get the ball into. I think Maddison's role in this team is going to be really important. So I think it's about supplying him as quickly and as much as possible in space. Which is what Brentford did really well with Damsgaard. And to be fair, they did that quite well with Collins playing at the back, who's not the best player on the ball, but his line breaking pass.
Worst player, really, Ben. I had
a bit of a stink with that one. I just didn't. I didn't really understand his. To be honest, I never really rated Nathan Collins up until.
I was with you though up until last season. I was kind of in the same boat as you on that, and obviously Brentford fans flamed us in the comments for that video, and
rightly so. And I feel like that kind of has a bit of a domino effect on the sort of midfielder that we might sign. I'm kind of with you. Like, I'd be quite inclined to give Basuma a pre-season under Frank. See, I think Bentancur sounds like Bentancur's definitely staying and signing a new contract. So that's one of them is 100%. One of them is staying. But I wouldn't mind giving Basuma a pre-season to see, because I'm like you. I do think in a pivot, even though at times at his best he could 100% play as a 6 on his own, but he was never consistent enough to do that. Or I think the role probably demanded too much of him to do that, to be able to do it on a consistent basis. So, I think I wouldn't mind giving him a pre-season, but I still think in an ideal world you look to target someone maybe better and someone who is. I agree. Who, I don't know, it's a difficult one really, because but this is why Basuma is so frustrating, because on his day there aren't many better than him.
Genuinely, like when he's on it, like the first 10 games of Ange Postecoglou's era, I mean in the Europa League final as well, like sometimes he looks so good and sometimes it's just like, who even is this player that we signed from Brighton?
I still maintain he was our best player in the final. I still think he was our best player in the final.
So do I. For now, just for the sake of the video, I'm going to move Basuma over to the sell column, because there are still strong rumours about him leaving Tottenham, and it is potentially an area that we could still definitely look to upgrade on. The last player that I'm going to touch within this team, because it's Ben Davies. Ben Davies has signed his new contract now. But
it's still a bit up in the air as to whether that means that they're doing that to get a fee for him. I still think my inkling is that he still stays. So I think we'll
leave him there. The only other one I'm going to move is Dragusin, just because he's got that ACL injury that keeps him out till December. I doubt he'll feature much next season anyway, and I think he'll be looked to move on.
I'm not going to lie. I think Dragusin could be back before that.
Do you reckon? I think the time frame was November, December time.
Oh, okay. So maybe not then,
because it was January his injury, his ACL, wasn't it? But you never know. So, I mean, some players can recover from ACLs in 6 months, so he could be back for pre-season. You never know. But that is the squad that we've got. Now, I think it looks a little bit thinner on the ground than it actually is, because obviously you've got a lot of players who can cover different positions. Like, you've got 4 players there for 2 midfield positions. You can move Gray over like that. You've got 5 centre-halves. But there are still definitely some areas that need to be targeted for me, like have to be targeted. And they are in the yellow. The right winger, because obviously you could do this, you could push Mikey Moore out there, and you could put Dejan Kulusevski in the number 10, and all of a sudden it's only really Brennan Johnson whose actual favoured position is a right winger in this squad. The number 6 too, I think we just need one more midfield profile in there almost, which we'll get on to discuss, quite a specific profile too in there for the double pivot. I don't think we necessarily need an out-and-out 6 anymore, because Thomas Frank will likely play with a double pivot. It's not like Ange Postecoglou's system where you had a 6 who really needed to do everything, all the defensive work in that system, especially when we used to play with Maddison and Kulusevski as the 2 sort of advanced days. And that left centre-back / left-back depth as well. I think, again, we're going to discuss the profiles, but I quite like the idea of a hybrid sort of defender in that area that can cover both of those 2 areas. Obviously, that's just how modern-day football is nowadays. So, getting into the first position that we're going to touch upon, Ben, the right wing spot. Now, we've been linked to a few names, and I've jotted down a few. Antoine Semenyo, there's been quite strong links to him recent days about the fact that Tottenham Hotspur hold a lot of appreciation for the player, and that there could be a deal to be done there with Bournemouth, despite the fact that it probably would be quite expensive. Brian Mbeumo is still one that's really feels up in the air. At one point, we thought he was nailed on to go Manchester United because of his preferences, and now it seems like the door might be a little bit more open there. And I've also thrown in a little bit of a wild card, somebody who I've spoken about quite a lot before on all of my channels that I really, really like. And I can't profess to have watched him loads, but the few times that I have watched him, he's been so exciting. And that is Zagrova from Lille, Zagrova, however you pronounce his name. He's another really exciting option, 25-year-old right winger who is incredibly technical, 1v1 specialist, who plays for Lille currently. So, out of those 3 options, Ben, first of all, which one takes your fancy, and are there any other names that you think could potentially be in that conversation?
I think it's Semenyo for me, to be honest. I was always a little bit... at the start of the season when I think when Kulusevski moved inside, or the start of the season just gone, sorry, when Kulusevski started to move inside the pitch and play as that number 10, I think we all sort of sat up and was like, okay, Brennan Johnson is scoring goals, he's doing really well, but if Spurs are going to persist with this and play like this, and Ange is the manager for the long term, then I think we do need a right winger. And I think those sort of conversations started to happen around like September, October, when that tactical shift started to happen. And I remember there was a bit of a debate about Mbeumo and Semenyo then, and Semenyo started the season really well. I think he was kind of leading the numbers for like a lot of good pressing numbers, kind of carries leading to a shot and all that, those kind of stats as well. And he started the season really well. And I think a lot of people kind of identified him as a really good fit for Postecoglou's kind of system, because he was kind of that direct winger that we didn't really have. Not necessarily like a 1v1 specialist, but someone who could just beat players, like had the confidence to drive.
He's so direct, isn't he? So direct.
So direct, such a really good dribbler on both feet, such a good shooter on both feet. He takes a lot of shots. Yeah. And he can be a little bit scattergun, I think, at times, and a little bit frustrating, I think. And I think those frustrations kind of came a bit later in the season when things started to not go as well for Bournemouth. But first half of the season, he was absolutely brilliant. And there, obviously the other side of the coin was Mbeumo, because I think a lot of people saw him again as like another really good option. But I think I was always kind of, as much as I liked Semenyo, I was kind of always leaning towards Mbeumo a little bit more. But I do actually think Semenyo would be a better fit, because I think what you have got on the right-hand side with Kulusevski already is something that you can replicate Mbeumo's role a little bit, with that ability to, like, that crossing ability, that poise and composure in the final third, shooting ability. I think Kulusevski needs to brush up on his finishing a little bit, to be honest. He should be a much better finisher for the quality of player that he actually is. But I think you can replicate that role a little bit with Kulusevski, maybe just minus some of the pace that Mbeumo's got and that desire to always get him behind. Kulusevski's never really played like that, but I think you can take some elements of what you lose if you weren't going to sign Mbeumo and have that in Kulusevski. Whereas Semenyo, I think, I still think left wing is an area that we need to look at, but maybe that's where the versatility of some of the players that are already there comes in handy, and also the versatility of some of the players that you look to sign comes in. And I think Semenyo ticks that box. If we're going to talk about a number 10 further down the line as well in this video, I think signing a 10 that could maybe play in one of those positions is also quite smart, to be honest. And I think Semenyo, when you look at his ability to come in, like obviously with Mbeumo, what you see a lot is him kind of coming in off that right-hand side and finishing on his left foot. Semenyo is naturally right-footed, but you wouldn't think it the way that he does strike the ball on his weaker foot.
He doesn't care, does he? Both-footed.
I think he's not as good.
He's not the best weapon to have as a footballer, especially as an attacker. Not enough footballers have it these days either.
No, I don't think he's as good a crosser as Mbeumo, but I think he could be as good a finisher. And I think, again, that crossing is Kulusevski's one of his biggest strengths, aside from like his ball carrying, etc. So I think Semenyo makes more sense to me. It's a lot of money, and I wouldn't really do it for, like, I don't know, 60 million. Like,
I won't go over 60.
A lot.
Yeah. Whereas I think if they've set their asking price at 70, haven't they? So if we could definitely probably get a deal. The thing is, though, Bournemouth don't need to sell. That's the problem that we're going to face. Semenyo's 25 years old. His stocks are probably only going to go up if he stays at Bournemouth for another season. So I think it would be a deal where you do it on Bournemouth terms or you don't do it at all. So I think definitely Mbeumo could be more viable financially, but I'm in the same boat as you, really, with Semenyo. I think, what you say about his crossing is 100% true, but I think he's somebody who loves to get to the byline as well as cutting inside and shooting and whipping those sort of lower crosses across the face, which I actually think suits somebody like a Dominic Solanke, somebody like, a Matisse Tell arriving at the back post, even a Brennan Johnson arriving at the back post quite a lot. And he's a profile that we just don't have in our squads. Like, we don't have that player who will relentlessly drive at a defender 1v1 and always have something happen at the end of it, whether it's a chance created, whether it's an erratic shot, whether it's anything. He will create something and he will cause, like, he's the kind of player who, if he develops a little bit more in his game, it's one of those where you've always got to have at least two men on him, because you can't leave him exposed 1v1 defensively, especially not in any sort of space. So he's incredibly exciting for me as a profile. I've been banging the Semenyo drum for such a long time, and if there is a deal to be done there this summer, for me, in terms of profile, now. I like him more than I like Mbuemo. I love the profiles of Grover as well. Like, if he came in again, he's somebody who's quite 1v1. He's a little bit more creative than Antoine Semenyo and a little bit less effective in terms of shot output and stuff like that. So you've actually got three quite different profiles there that I quite like. But I think are we gonna agree on go for Semenyo, but either of the other two would be great options as well?
Yeah, they would. Yeah, they would be 100%. One completely unrealistic one that Spurs would be unbelievable for Thomas Frank would be Jared Bowen. But it's just not going to happen. I mean, Jared Bowen, in his own right, is one of the best wingers in the Premier League. But could you imagine him in that kind of Mbuemo role? Like, it just, that's not going to happen. But
I think the other thing for me with this signing as well is, I think a key theme, and something both me and Ben spoke about in our Thomas Frank videos, is we don't really know what Thomas Frank is going to do yet. And Thomas Frank is a manager who is so adaptive, is constantly talking about how he needs to learn and improve and how he loves to experiment with different things, and giving him as many profiles as you can possibly give him is only going to be a benefit for next season. It's not like an Ange Postecoglou where you know kind of exactly the kind of profile he needs in each position. Like, you wanted touchline wingers, you wanted 1v1 dribblers out there, you wanted, those sort of creative number 10s and stuff. With Thomas Frank, I think it's about finding profiles within this squad that we don't already have, and that for me is Antoine Semenyo. So for that right winger spot, for me, that is the one that you go all out for. And if we can't make it happen, if it is too expensive, and Mbuemo and Zagrova are two great options as well. On to the next. The next one I wanted to look at was the sort of defensive-minded midfielder. Now, again, like I said earlier in the video, it's not necessarily an out-and-out number 6 like a Rodri who's going to do absolutely everything and be everywhere and play on his own in there. It will likely be in a pivot, but I'd like to sign a more defensive-minded player who can play in a double pivot, who could also maybe even play by himself. Again, about those profiles that Thomas Frank would like to have in his squad. And I've got a couple of options here. João Paulinho is somebody who looks like he could be available to sign from Bayern Munich this summer. Obviously has not got on under Vincent Kompany, but he was absolutely outstanding for Fulham in the Premier League, and he's a player who has a particular skill set and a particularly strong skill set in that defensive area. Angelo Stiller as well from Stuttgart, really key focus on there with the sort of progressive passing from deep, and I think could be something that could become way more necessary. Like Ben said earlier on in the video, if Romero is to move on from Tottenham Hotspur because of what you lose from him, and Stiller is an excellent sort of passer, deep lying playmaker, and Rovella as well, a little bit of a cheaper option from Lazio, who's had a brilliant season over in Serie A, a little bit similar to Stiller as well in terms of really nice numbers from deep in terms of those progressive passes and stuff. So
also great at breaking it up. Like,
exactly.
Rovella is kind of that. He can kind of do a bit of everything from what I've seen. Rovella, I quite like him actually.
So is he the one that you would be looking to favour in there, do you think?
I don't know. I think Paulinho makes a lot of sense because I think you've got someone who's 29?
Yeah.
29.
He's around that age.
That gives you... Bear in mind, he was playing at a quality level in the Premier League like a season ago when he was 27. He's not just going to lose that. I think he's someone that can play into his early 30s at a good level. And it gives you another couple of years where you can just blood Gray in a little bit more. Because as much as, obviously, Bergvall has taken to the Prem like a duck to water, Gray has looked a little bit more like a fish out of water when he's played in midfield. But then again, that's because it's been a completely broken setup around him with lots of rotation in and around him, different midfield partners, a whole different setup around him, and it's kind of not made Gray look the greatest, to be honest. But I have no doubt that Archie Gray will be a really good player for Spurs. But 100%. I think in that number 6 role, and also to be fair to Gray, like this is definitely going to suit him a lot more playing in that kind of structure with a partner alongside him. So there's no reason why Gray can't play good minutes in the defensive midfield role next season. But
just on Archie Gray, there's been some rumours over the last couple of days. Leeds being back in the Premier League, if we did sign another number 6 and you sort of had all of those midfield options in there, so we keep Bissouma as well, would you send Archie Gray back to Leeds for a season on loan?
No, I don't think so. I think I'd keep him around. I'd keep him with Thomas Frank. I'd keep him with the coaching staff. I think he's such a versatile player as well that you can use if you want to switch to a back 5 in a game because of that experience of playing at centre half. I think
lots of football next season as well.
Lots of football next season. I also see him kind of like, I remember when Declan Rice first came through at West Ham, where he was kind of playing at centre back, but also a bit of an anchor in midfield at times. Like I can kind of, if Frank is to switch to a 5 at points in games, I kind of see Gray being a really handy player to have in that squad for that. So I don't know. I wouldn't loan Gray out. I think it's much better to keep him around. I think loaning him out actually after 1 year back to the club that we bought him from actually sends out a bit of a poor message to him and about the buy in general. I think keep him here, keep him developing, get him working under a new set of coaches. I'm no disrespect to Postecoglou or the coaching staff, because they've given him a bountiful, really good amount of experience that's going to stand him in really good stead, playing as much as he did last season, even though it was out of position. It's not detrimental to his game whatsoever. I think the complete opposite. But I think new coaches, new voices, new ideas, keep him around the club. I think definitely do that. I think Paulinho makes sense though, because I do think, despite the fact that I think Gray will play a decent amount of football, it takes the pressure off Gray a little bit, and it's someone who's got experience. Who, all right, he didn't play that much at Bayern, but has come from a club that's just won the league. Like if a Premier League club had bought him a year ago for £50 million, you wouldn't have batted an eyelid. Like that. No, that is a player that's got real quality. And
people saying it was great when Bayern signed him. It's just he's not got on under Vincent Kompany, isn't it? It sort of doesn't fit their style of play. He likes to have Joshua Kimmich inverting, and he's obviously got other youngsters like Pavlovic and
wouldn't mind Pavlovic.
I love Pavlovic, but that's just completely unrealistic. I think the thing I love about Paulinho again is that, is Paulinho going to start 60 games for Tottenham Hotspur next season if he was signed? No. Would he start against teams where we were really pinning them in, putting them under pressure at home? Probably not. Would João Paulinho be perfect if you're going away to the Emirates, to the Etihad, to Anfield, away on those big Champions League games, and you need somebody who is just going to have such incredibly high levels of tackles and interception numbers? He was always at the top of the Premier League charts for tackles and interceptions at Fulham when he was there, and he's not extravagant on the ball. He's not going to ping 60-yard passes over to Tell or whoever's playing on the left-hand side. He's going to win the ball back for you, and he's going to give it to the players around him that are better than him. And having him in there for me, with a Bergvall next to him and then James Maddison in front of him, that would be such a nicely balanced midfield in my opinion. And all of a sudden you're giving Thomas Frank an extra profile in there that he can really use effectively, maybe a little bit similar to somebody like a Christian Norgard that he had at Brentford, and then he's got his other playmakers around him. Like, they used to love the midfield of Norgard and Jensen, and that for me feels a little bit similar to how a midfield of Paulinho and Bergvall could be set up. And I really, really do like the idea of João Paulinho. I think it'd be definitely worth looking at somebody like a Stiller or a Ravella if Romero is to leave, like me and Ben said. But for now, I think Paulinho would probably be my top choice in that sort of defensive midfield options. And the fact that he's available for 30 mil.
Yeah, it sounds like Real Madrid are having like a free run at Stiller, which is just quite frustrating. Like nobody.
Yeah. Stiller's quality, 23 years old, with the ability that he's got.
There's the chance that he might not go there as well, because I think Real Madrid are looking for that Cruz replacement, but they might also find that a little bit in Trent, like coming in from right back.
Potentially, 100%.
Maybe there's a chance there. Some other players, I mean, Adam Wharton is literally the ideal, but that's never happening.
Baleba and Wharton are the two they're the two that if we were a serious club, we would probably be going after right now. But unfortunately that's just never going to happen. They're probably two players that are both cost in excess of £100 million right now, just because Palace and Brighton don't need to sell, and that is how much they are worth to them. So I think it'd be
Paulinho in there, lad. I think
Paulinho in there. I think if we sign those two this summer, Paulinho and Semenyo, for those two positions, I think that's brilliant for me personally.
Agreed.
Left centre-back and left-back, this kind of, again, I quite like the idea of a hybrid, like I said in there. There's a couple of options in here. Obviously, everybody knows the sort of top-tier shouts. Like, you've got your Premier League shouts like the Jared Branthwaites. You've got Esteve, who's obviously coming up from Burnley. But those two, for me, feel more like just centre-halves rather than those hybrid players. Two shouts for me that I really, really like the idea of. I don't know how possible. I think one of the deals would be really possible, and I think one of the deals would be quite difficult just because of how highly rated he is. Joel Hatto at Ajax.
I knew he was going to say.
Yeah. He's looking like a really, really talented youngster. Has played both left back and left centre half for Ajax and the Netherlands recently. He's 19 years old. Will probably cost a fair chunk of money, but again, Ajax are the type of club where they do sell their talent. They are a seller. And Arthur Tayat as well. Obviously, currently, is he on loan at Frankfurt or is he permanently at Frankfurt? I actually probably should have done some research on that, shouldn't I, before we started this video? But
he is currently. Bear with.
I think he's.
No, they bought him. He was on loan at Frankfurt
season before.
Yeah, no, it says he was on loan at Frankfurt this season, but it also says on Wikipedia Frankfurt 2025 onwards. So maybe unless they bought him in January, maybe made it permanent in January.
Yeah, well, to be fair then, they might not actually want to sell him if they've just bought him. But yeah, Arthur Tayat is somebody who, even in the Frankfurt games in the Europa League this season, those quarterfinals, really, really impressed me with how well he defended those wide channels. And obviously, Tottenham aren't the most threatening team in those wide channels. So, he hasn't been tested to the maximum level. But I think if you look at his sort of abilities on the ball, I think he's a little bit underrated. He doesn't look the smoothest on the ball. He's a little bit clunky sometimes, but he's actually got quite good statistics on the ball in terms of progressive passes, moving out into those wider channels. He's got pace as well. Like I said, defends the wide channels well, covers space really nicely. And I just feel like as a depth option, you could do a lot worse than somebody like an Arthur Tayat. And obviously, Gerald Hatter would probably be your slightly younger, slightly more talented, slightly higher ceiling option than him. But out of those shouts, and maybe some of your own, Ben, who do you like out of those? And would you, if you were going to go for one position, which one would you actually favour in terms of defensive depth?
I do like the idea of a hybrid, to be honest. I think that makes a lot of sense, because I do think that a doggy needs competition, and I think he's going to get it from Spence. I think Frank, there's a good chance that he will use Spence on that left-hand side as well, given how much Spence actually played there last season.
Yeah.
And if you think about how he kind of used Keane Lewis Potter as well as a right-footed player out there who was able to kind of drive inside and open the pitch up, I think Spence can definitely do that. But both of them, we need fullback depth and fullback competition, but we also desperately need left-sided centre-back competition and depth for Van der Ven, which is why a left centre-back, left-back hybrid makes the most sense. Hatto would be just perfect. He would be. I think Burnley are going to demand silly money for Esteve.
60
they
million.
Don't really need to sell, and they're probably going to sell a player like Trafford as well, who they might get good money for, so they won't be under that much pressure to sell him. But he would be really good as well as more of an out-and-out centre-back. I mean, there's always the shout that always comes back is Hincapié, isn't it, from Bayer Leverkusen? He always comes up, but I mean, they've been raided already this summer. They're not going to sell another one, surely. So,
no. I think he signed a new contract last season as well, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's got a long-term deal there as well. So
he would be ideal, but I think
he'd be perfect.
I think Jarell Hatto, I think the problem is with Jarell Hatto is that I think he is a talent. Where then again, Spurs have, he's obviously more known than players like Bergvall and Vuskovic and
the last tweet I looked at from Romano said Liverpool, Real Madrid and Barcelona were all interested. So
then again, Barcelona are interested in Bergvall, so maybe Spurs can convince him of the project. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Ange is his one parting gift to get on the phone.
Ange, director of football for the summer.
Exactly.
I mean, I think when you play for Ajax, there's a level of hype that goes around you, and the fact that he's a bit like, it feels. Did you say he's already captained Ajax? Did you say that, or did you say he's played for?
I don't think he's. I'm not sure if he's captained Ajax.
Okay, fair.
Obviously, he's made his debut for the Netherlands as well.
Well, I was going to say about De Ligt. You know how De Ligt, it feels a bit like him, where he broke through, he did captain Ajax very young. It feels like that level. Yeah, exactly. It feels like that level of player with him, and De Ligt at that time was linked with. I mean, he obviously went to Juve, then went to Bayern. I think that's the sort of club you're going to see Hatto end up at, a top club, unfortunately.
Yeah,
but he would be ideal. Also because I don't think Spurs, especially if you're bringing in Paulinho and Semenyo, two Premier League proven players, nothing should stop you from signing young talents if they're of that level. And they're
100%.
I'll go for Hatto. I think Branthwaite spending, especially if Romero stays, I think spending that money on Branthwaite, as much as I like Branthwaite, bear in mind he is an out-and-out left-footed centre-half.
Yeah.
I think that would be silly, to be honest. Or not silly, but unless you're losing Romero and you want to make a statement centre-back signing. But even then, it doesn't really make that much sense because he's left-footed.
No, 100%. I agree. Spending silly money on that position, I don't think is necessarily needed. When, look, I mean, you have players like Kevin Danso who could definitely go over and do a job at left centre half.
Yeah, exactly.
Romero could play there if Van der Ven was injured. You never know. And I think those two options, Hatto and Tayat, if we got either of them through the door, that would be an incredibly serious statement, I think, to make as a football club in terms of. I think both of them would, be really, really good to get through the door. Both of them being looked at by top clubs. Both of them will probably cost a decent chunk of money as well. And I think that would be a nice statement for our sort of that side of our defence, which definitely needs work. And I can see us probably signing somebody a little bit more low profile. Maybe we sign a young player at left back to sort of be the backup to Destiny Udogie, who would get minutes here and there next season. I'm not sure of names, but there's sort of always some names that come out later on in the transfer window, aren't there? But I'm happy with those two shouts, defo. Now, the next position we've got, I've sort of marked down as a sort of free position, because it feels like we're still in the market for a sort of high, a number 10 left wing sort of option, just a quality midfield player. And it feels like, I mean, if you're spending, let's just say ballpark figures, You get Semenyo for 60. You get Paulinho for 30. You get Hato or Teat for 40, say. You know, you've only spent 110, 120 million pounds there, or 130 million pounds, sorry. So you've still got a decent chunk of money left over, especially if you're selling those 4 players. You would hope to get about 20 million, maybe 25 million for Richarlison. You'd hope to get maybe similar for Yves Bissouma as well. So, you know, maybe a little bit less, maybe 15 to 20 million. But you would hope, again, if Spurs are being serious, you don't know, because obviously it's Daniel Levy, it's Tottenham Hotspur, and there's been rumourings that we might look to spend more money next season after we've got that Champions League revenue in. Yeah. And I don't necessarily think any of these players are essential for us, but there's obviously always the rumours with Eze. There's the rumours with Gibbs White as well right now. There's some mental rumours going around of Xavi Simons, which I just can't imagine happening at all. But
big class though.
Are you still on the Eze train? Is that where we are here? Do you think?
Yeah, I think that's exactly where I am, to be honest.
Yeah.
I just think with Eze, like, I think it's one of those things where, like, with Xavi Simons, I think Xavi Simons would actually would be better. Well, not better, but I think it kind of make more sense because of that versatility of playing. It literally could play any position across that front line behind the striker, right, left, 10. Whereas Eze's slightly more limited in that sense, but I think with Eze, what the thing for me, right, is that I'm really intrigued to see how he's going to use Kulusevski. Yeah. And I think it will be predominantly as a right winger. So then you've got Brennan Semenyo, who can play both sides, and then Kulusevski as well. Obviously, you've got Odegaard. This is the thing. It's like we have actually got quite a lot of attacking options. And I also think quite a lot of quality there that is waiting to sort of explode. But I do think with Eze, one thing you are guaranteeing is that Premier League proven quality that we want to add to the squad this summer. And also, I think I'm not sure how well Kulusevski actually profiles as a Frank kind of 10. Again, this is just basing it off of what we saw with Brentford last season. That's not to say that Frank isn't going to change. I think Maddison absolutely suits it down to the ground, 100%. And that's why when you consider Maddison's injury record as well, and the fact that you want to, because he's going to be so important in my eyes, like you're going to want to wrap him up in cotton wool a little bit. And I'm not saying don't play him in every game, but like if you've got the opportunity to bring in a player in Eze who could be your starting left winger.
Maddison doesn't play 90 minutes twice a week, does he?
Not a chance. Absolutely not a chance. And bear in mind, he's going to come into the season off the back of an injury as well. I think getting in someone who would literally just is as good as Maddison in terms of starting quality, maybe better. Not sure. Yeah. That's up for debate, 100%. But also would be your starting left winger straight away. Like again, I feel like with Frank, it's like as much as we've got this idea of him, this system that he's going to play, and we're going to make these videos and talk about how Frank might set up at Tottenham. I think Frank's best asset is actually just being able to work with the strengths of the players that he's got and profile players accordingly and make a system that is going to get the best out of everyone and improve everyone as well. So it's not a guarantee that Spurs set up in the way that we thought he might do. Which is why, again, Eze is a left winger in that kind of role. When you think about how you use Sharda, etc., doesn't really work. Really, doesn't get the best out of Eze. Again, you're still going to get quality.
I think Eze's a 10 in the Thomas Frank system.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Because I think as well, maybe if you have a Semenyo on the other side, then you can have an Eze playing him here. You've got that direct 1v1 player who will sort of, hug the touchline a little bit more potentially, and Eze can have more license to drift inside. But I think the thing with Eze is we can try and reason it all we want, but it doesn't really make loads of sense for this squad. But it's Eze. It's the character, it's the player. He feels so Spurs. You're getting guaranteed quality through the door, a player who can play in multiple positions. And I think he's one that so many Spurs fans have wanted for such a long time. He's my favourite player outside of Tottenham in the Premier League. I would love us to do a deal for him.
So the way to balance it as well, with that versatility that we have got, Tell also becomes a backup number 9. So it's not like it's not a waste of like, you're not just
Tell's in between here, isn't it? Yeah. Because you look at how he's used somebody like a Johan Visser,
I think Tell is a striker in the system. Over time, I think. Well, again, I keep saying this system, but like under Frank, I think could really explode.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I was kind of looking at for the last position. I was kind of looking at that backup number 9 position or a Romero replacement. I feel like the Romero replacement conversation has been done quite a lot. I feel like the sort of names you got the likes of. That's where you go for that more expensive starting centre half, obviously to replace Romero. The likes of Mark Gahey, Zabani from Bournemouth, Diamonde from Sporting Lisbon. But do you think we need to sign a backup number 9? Because I'd quite like to see us like maybe make like a market opportunity. If we could just get like a 9 on a free transfer, or like really on the cheap. Like I saw that Inter Milan were going to be desperate to shift Mediterranean next summer, who's like, I think he's 29 years old, obviously scored goals in Porto, and apparently they're only looking for a €7 million fee for him.
Really?
I'm not saying him, but something like that. If Richarlison does go out the door, where maybe you take on a market opportunity, maybe you bring that backup number 9 in through the door, somebody who is like almost a Fernando Llorente kind of player. Because do you remember how useful Llorente used to be for us? Like, I think there's so much room in football still for those kind of profiles where, yeah, he's never going to start a game for you probably. If Solanke's injured, it will probably be Tell through the middle, or whoever, or whatever Thomas Frank wants to do. But last 20 minutes of a game, you bring on Taremi, somebody who's so good in the air, a presence in the box. Low key, sign Paul Onuachu. Like get him through the door. Like I think something like that. Obviously not Onuachu, I'm joking, but something like that I could really like. I can't lie.
I see it if there's an opportunity to do. I don't think it's a priority, but if there's an opportunity in the market. I've said it for a while. Like I've said it for a while, a couple of weeks. I would love McTominay. In terms of what Spurs could actually do better with, if you were to look at Brentford, I've said it for a couple of weeks. I actually think we could do with Visser more than Mbeumo. Even though Mbeumo would be our starting right winger, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I would turn down the chance to sign Mbeumo over Visser necessarily, but you could make the argument that Visser actually makes more sense.
Visser, or if you have on the table tomorrow Visser for £40 million, are you doing it?
No,
you want cheaper than that.
I think I would want cheaper than that. As a backup striker, Brendan, it's not a priority. Yeah,
to be fair, I do remember that Visser was linked to Nottingham Forest in January for 25 million quid, I think. So yeah, something like that
as well, like quite heavily towards
100%. If you could get somebody in like that, worked with Thomas Frank, fills a hole, perfect. You know, can come on last 20 minutes of the game, etc., be a little bit of a fox in the box, whatever, can win flick-ons, mate. And but Visser gives me Lucas Moura vibes a little bit, not in terms of similar play styles, but he has an absolute leap on him. Like he does things physically that you wouldn't expect somebody of his size and stature to be able to do. Yeah. A little bit similar to what Lucas Moura used to be able to do. Like Lucas Moura used to score so many headers. Remember that header from the corner against West Ham where he jumped about 17 metres in the air? Like something like that. Or I can't lie, if Fernando Llorente wants to come out of retirement, genuinely, like what could he not do now that he couldn't used to do for us? You know what I mean? Like Muniz, something like that.
Rodrigo Muniz.
Yeah, again, if somebody like a Muniz is available for 15, 20 million, why not? Why not us?
Why not us? I also think, look, we've got. I mean, we're touching it obviously in the keep, loan, sell, but we've also got a plethora of young strikers that we could maybe give a pre-season to, mate. I've got my thesaurus out, but Lancashire might get an opportunity. I still think another Championship loan would do the best of good, but
I don't see Lancashire being there next year.
I think striker is I think it's a market opportunity signing, to be honest, because I think you've got Tell. If we do sign Tell, which I think all roads are pointing to that, Spurs are still tweeting about him as if he's our player, even though his contract's not up, which is why they're doing it. But it feels like Tell will be a Spurs player, I think, and I think Frank's going to love him.
100% right. I've put a market opportunity there, looking at the likes of Taremi, potentially Visser, somebody like that. But those kind of things normally happen later on in transfer windows when a club are desperate to sell a player. You go in there, you can get them for 20 million less than you could get them at the start of the window. So I like that. If we made those 4 signings plus the market opportunity, I would be absolutely over the moon with that.
Yeah, we'd win the league.
We win the Champions League. We would do the treble, mate. Honestly, I've been saying this in every video I've been recording recently. Spurs fans, get excited about Thomas Frank. Get excited about him coming into Tottenham Hotspur. I really do believe that. This is the end of the video. If you are new, like I said, please consider dropping a subscribe. If you come over from Ben's channel, drop a like on the video too. Go to Ben's channel now. I'll leave the links in the description. We are doing a keep, loan, sell on there, so that'll be good fun. So go and give that a watch as well. Thank you very much for watching. Ben, any final words?
Thomas Frank's tricky. Tottenham are going to take over the Champions League, mate.
Facts. And also, before I forget as well, go and check out the FC Bottle Job podcast, obviously myself and Ben's podcast. So that's cooking at the moment. So we've got quite a few cool things, a couple of cool guests on over the next couple of weeks too. So yeah, thank you for watching. Nice one.
See ya.